This is a video about using inheritance in Java. So when we think of inheritance, there's so many things we can think of, like a giant pile of money falling from the sky. That'd be nice. Um, but in Java, it doesn't work exactly that way. The idea in Java and any object-oriented language is this idea that everything is part of is a part of something. So, for example, a cat is a mammal. A dog is a mammal. Mammals, a mammal is an animal. Similarly, you could look at a lizard is a reptile. A snake is a reptile, right? So the idea of inheritance is very natural in the world around us, or at least hierarchy is natural in the world around us. And the same thing applies in programming. So for example, if I had some attributes that all animals shared, or some methods that all animals would share, then I could put them in this superclass or a parent class. And then I could start adding more specialized components. Maybe when I come down to mammal, these are all warm-blooded, and everything that's reptile is cold-blooded, right? So maybe I start thinking of different attributes. These all come from eggs. These, are all born type of things. There's a very natural hierarchy and way that information is structured, and the same thing is possible in Java. So for example, if we had the idea of an employee for a company, our employee, certain things are going to be common to all employees. All employees are going to have a first name and a last name. They're going to all have some kind of social insurance number. They're all going to have some way to contact them, an employee number. Those things are common for an employee. But a commission employee is going to be compensated very differently than an hourly employee. Hourly employees, for every hour they work, they're going to get paid a certain fixed rate, whereas a commissioned employee is only going to get paid based on what they sell. So, although both these classes, could use some of the common pieces of an employee class, they also have some differences. And the nice thing with this idea of inheritance is I can define all things that are common in this parent class, and then what I do is I basically just put the specialized pieces in these subclasses. They will inherit the rest. So let's look at how we do that in Java. So in Java, I've made a few different classes here. The first one is an employee. So just like our diagram here, the employee is the name of the class. So every employee has a first name, a last name, an email to get in touch with them, and a title, right, with their job title. They have a social insurance number, and they have a date that they started with the company, and each employee has an employee number. And up till now, everything we've done is we've had this idea of keeping them private, right? The attributes of a class are private. I've made one of them protected, just so I can talk to what the difference between public, private, and protected is for these variables. But in general, most times we're going to stick with private. So if I look at the constructor for an employee, I'm going to give their first name, their last name, an email address to contact them, whatever job they were initially hired for, and their social insurance number. And then down here, I set their first name, last name, their email, their title, social insurance number. But then I've done something that we haven't done before in the class, this idea of a date, right? So we have a date object here. And this counts the number of milliseconds since I think it's January 1st, 1970. But that's just how Java represents dates. So, so we have a date object. So I say the start date is equal to new date. And this actually will just return the exact timestamp, date and time of where whatever today is. So this is a really nice method. So when we add them into the system, we know their start date. And then the employee number, I didn't pass this information in, but what's really kind of a neat feature of building sort of this idea of a parent class is that I can create a static instance variable, or sorry, it's not an instance variable, a static global variable. And what that means is, so all of all of these are not static, meaning I have to have an instance of the class to access these. So for each employee, these will all be different. But because this is static, I don't need an actual instance of the class. All employees will refer to this exact same employee number. So when we first call the class, it's initially set to be this number. And then every time we add an employee, that goes up by 1. So functionally what that's going to do for us is all employees, all instances of employees, contribute to changing that number. So every time we add an employee, this goes up by 1. Whereas the rest of these are all specific to a specific employee. This is going to be common to our entire company. So in here I have all the get and set methods that you would expect, like, you know, what's the person's email address, what's their title, how to return their name, their start date, their, you know, all that type of stuff. So setting the title, you know, maybe someone gets a promotion, they get a new title with that, so we can update things. So that's an employee. That's the employee class. Those are all the things that every employee is going to have. And then I built another class. Now here, I said this class extends. So it's a commission employee. So if I go over here, this is a commission employee. It extends employee. So what that means is a commission employee is everything that an employee has, plus it's going to have some unique qualities. So when I do, really, what are the differences with a commission employee? Well, they have some kind of commission rate that is set for them based on their contract. And then I've put together an array that can hold their sales information for the year. So for 1 year at a time, I could pull up this employee's sales records. So when I build the constructor for this, the start of it looks exactly the same as an employee. So first, last, email, title, social insurance number. And then I've added in this one called commission rate. So the first thing you have to do whenever you're extending an existing class is you have to call the constructor of the parent class. So I say super, right? So that means call the constructor of my parent, and I pass in all the things that are in the employee constructor, right? So first, last, email, title, social insurance number. If I go here, first, last, email, title, social insurance number. So that has to stay the same, right? I have to pass that in. So it creates that superclass constructor. And then here, I'm going to set my commission rate to whatever was passed in. And I'm going to initialize my sales array to have 12 positions. And then here I can set the monthly sales. So given a month number, you know, for example, if it was February, you know, and the person sold $10,000, so this would be 10,000. This would be 2. So sales in position 2 minus 1 is 1. So sales at position 1, which would be February, is equal to whatever the sales amount was. And then I have a similar type of thing where, given a month number, I take that sales amount and I times it by their commission rate to figure out their commission. And this last method I have here, I created it so that we could sort of see the downside of this protected variable. So in the employee class, everything is private, right? Which means only an instance of the employee class can see it, right? So if I actually, even in my subclass, if I wanted to get the person's first name, I can't access it directly. I have to use the, you know, get name method to access it. So because it is protected, not private, that means any instance of the class can actually just reference that variable directly. And although that may not seem like a bad thing, the big risk here is that you will find situations where the child method or the child classes may violate some of the rules that you're setting in the parent class. So you know, maybe we want to put a constraint on the start date to say that the start date cannot be an adjusted start date can't be any older than the existing one, right? Or that someone's salary could never go backwards, right? It could never go less than what it currently is. I don't know what the logic is, but if you have it distributed in several methods, it's very hard to control it. But if it's all nicely consolidated in one spot in that parent method, or sorry, the parent class, then you only have to modify it in one spot. You only have to control it and maintain it in one spot. So if there's a problem, you only have to go to one spot to fix it. So here you can see that I can see that variable directly. Whereas if I say this dot, I can see commission rate and sales because that's local to my class, but I can't see the person's first name, last name, social insurance number. I can't see any of those. The only one I can see from the parent class is this start date, right? Because it's protected, and you can see it's actually got a slightly different symbol, right? These ones are locked; they're private. That one's got a way of accessing it. Okay, so let's take a look. I've also created something here called the HR system. So the idea with the HR system is, this would be the tool where you'd keep track of all your employees. So I've created 2 employees, right? They're both commissioned employees. So employee 1 is equal to new commissioned employee. His name's Fred Flintstone. Let's make this one a different name, Barney Rubble. So one does dinosaur sales, one does aggregate sales. So what's nice, a couple of things I want to point out here. So one is, when we look at our employee class, I've used a very specific style of comments here before each method. And this is in alignment with the JavaDoc format. So when you do /**, whatever your comments are or your return types, it's going to interpret that. The IDE, the NetBeans, is going to interpret that as JavaDocs. So now when I go into my HR system, I could say employee 1, and if I bring up, you can see here, so start date, the JavaDoc is not found. There's no JavaDoc for it. But if I go to, let's say set monthly sales, here I can see my exact comments. The method receives the dollar value of sales and the month number in which the sales were performed, and then it talks about the specific parameters as well. So I can see what I should set. So let's set some monthly sales here. So $10,000 in month 11. And then I could go to print. You figure out my commission here. So commission for in this case, it's going to be Fred Flintstone. Now let's take a look at our, so I can get my commissions here. Okay, so if I were to do this, if I were to run this, I can see here the commission for Fred Flintstone in the 11th month is $1,000, right? So I created commissioned employee. I was able to set all their attributes. I was able to give them a monthly, set their sales amount. I was able to set their commission amount, all those things. And I did that with a commissioned employee that's using some of the attributes of an employee. So up to this point in the video, we've really looked at the idea of we have an employee which has a slew of existing attributes and methods. And we've created a commissioned employee that extends employee. So that means, again, that a commissioned employee has all the attributes and methods of an employee, plus there's some specialized ones. Now, if we want to create an hourly employee, we could do that as well. And I've added, built one on the side here. So here, again, it's an hourly employee is going to extend the employee class. So if I go back to my PowerPoint here, what I want is an hourly employee is going to have everything that a regular employee has, plus we're going to have this concept of, setting and getting their hourly rate, getting and setting the amount of hours that they've worked and their pay and things like that. Because the way they calculate pay for this is going to be different than the way you calculate pay for a commissioned person. So let's take a look at this now. I have a constructor here for an hourly employee. The first few pieces are exactly the same as an employee. The only thing that's different now is the hourly rate. And what I do is I call the constructor of the parent class employee. So I say super, and I pass in first name, last name, or email address, the title, and a social insurance number. And then I'm going to set their hourly rate. So if they're making $13, $14 an hour, it's going to get passed in here. Now what's great is all of these employees are all going to take advantage of this concept of the static integer for the next employee number. So every time we add an employee, even though all of the other attributes of an employee are personalized to each instance of employee, this is global across all employees. So we're going to get a unique employee number for every employee. So if we look at our hourly employee, so we have the idea here. So now we need to be able to set how many hours they've worked. So we have a simple little method for that. And we have a way to calculate their pay. So in this case, it's going to be the hourly rate times the hours worked. We'll just return that number. But what's beautiful here is I didn't need to create any other method about how to figure out their name or their email address, title. That's all inherited from the employee class. So if we go back to our idea of an HR system, I've changed it a little bit from earlier in the video. And since we're going to, a company will basically add and remove employees over time, I decided to capture it in something called an array list. So we have an array list called employees that stores all of our employees. So we can get to every employee, it's just in one spot. And here I added a few employees. We have Fred Flintstone, he's in dinosaur sales. We have Barney Rubble, who's in aggregate sales, and Bam Bam Rubble, who does product testing. So you can see here, these guys get a 10% commission on whatever they sell, whereas Bam Bam, he gets $13.45 per hour. And I created a method that says update the payroll. So what this will do is it'll actually loop through each employee and prompt the user to provide payroll information for them. And the way that I did that is we pass in the array list of employees, and then we're going to loop over the employees, and because we've set it at the generic level up here, where I said the array list is going to contain objects of the employee class. Each time we add it, we actually don't specify if the employee is a commissioned employee or an hourly employee. They're just employees. So if I, for example, if I said employees dot get, so if we get the employee at position 0, and then I go to look at methods that are available to me, I actually get a small subset of them. So what I do here is, once I get the employee, then I check its class. If its class is a commissioned employee, then I'm going to put in, for Fred Flintstone, employee number, whatever it is, please enter the sales amount in dollars, right? So it's going to ask me for the sales total that the person's responsible for. And you can imagine that, this could be automated in the system, right? Every time they punch their code into the cash register and then they make a sale, it would automatically call this method and update the amount of sales that they've done. And then what I do here is I say set monthly sales to whatever the user returned from the keyboard. And I hard-coded this to the 11th month because of the way that I created the that set monthly sales. It required a month number, so I put that in there. So if they're not a commission-based employee, then I'm assuming here, arguably wrongly, that they're an hourly employee. In which case, it says enter the number of hours a specific person worked, and then I'll set the hours worked to whatever information we got from the keyboard. So that will update our payroll information. Now each employee has sales, and each employee will have hours worked if they're an hourly employee. And then I say, well, print the payroll information. And here it's kind of a similar concept. I'm going to loop over this array list, and then for each employee, I'm going to figure out if they're commission-based or not. And if they are, then I call the method get commission for the 11th month, because again, I'm hard coding it to the 11th month. You wouldn't actually do that in a real program. Or if they're now an employee, get the pay amount. So let's run our program, see how it works. So again, here it says for Fred Flintstone, employee number, whatever that number is, please enter the sales amount in dollars. So so he sold $50,000 worth of product. And for Barney Rubble, and you can see again this idea of that static. Go back to our employee class. This static next employee number. You can see it incremented there, right? So we used to be 100, now it's 101. He didn't do quite as well as Fred. He only sold 500. And then it says enter the number of hours Bam Bam. Number of hours. This isn't very well worded. Enter the number of hours Bam Bam Rubble worked, which would sound nicer. Employee number, right? And again, it's different from those two. And let's say he worked 24 hours. So then when it loops over it, it's able to say, well, for Fred, there's his employee number. The commissions for this month are $5,000. For Barney, the commissions are $245. And for Bam Bam, the pay should be $322.80. So there we've created the concept of an employee superclass, an hourly employee versus commission-based employee. We've used array lists to create and hold all the employees in our company. We've got ways of updating our payroll and printing our payroll information. So although it's an academic exercise that we're looking at here, really you could see this is the elements of how a larger system would work. So instead of having something like this, you'd probably have a GUI that's the new employee GUI, and in there would be a field that says first name and a field that says last name. And then that GUI would actually pass this information into an array list, and you'd add a new employee. So I hope this really helps you understand the idea of inheritance. That's the main goal here. Where did our inheritance picture go? There it is. So that's really the big model. This is a relationship, right? So commission employee is an employee, and an hourly employee is an employee. We get a lot of reuse whenever we can set up this type of hierarchy in our code. If you have any questions, as always, please come see me. I'm happy to